The ICC is describing this as a breakthrough. What exactly has changed in this investigation?
So, in terms of the significance of this breakthrough, I think one has to look closely at the deputy prosecutor's language, describing the evidence as strong and linking it to leadership level. I think it indicates that the investigation has moved on from just merely documenting individual or isolated incidents to building a case theory around command responsibility, specifically in terms of the linkage evidence. That is a meaningful investigative milestone. However, it is not a confirmation of that warrants exist or that charges are imminent. The deputy prosecutor was very explicit about that and stated that the ICC rules prevent her from confirming that. So I think it will remain to be seen when and whether this investigative breakthrough can materialize in arrest warrants or arrests themselves. Historically, we have seen that due to lack of an enforcement entity of the ICC, that ICC arrest warrants or requests for surrender are highly dependent on state cooperation and political will. But having said that, I think, especially from the perspectives of the victims and survivors of these atrocities, these developments are important and are an important message that they are not forgotten.
Yeah. I mean, as you talk about this not being confirmation that arrest warrants exist and that charges are indeed imminent, what does it mean then to have evidence linking atrocities directly to leadership figures?
So it links to one of the articles under the ICC statute, which is Article 28. And Article 28, a military or civilian commander can bear individual criminal responsibility for crimes committed by forces under their effective command. So where a commander knew or should have known that crimes were committed and they failed to prevent or punish them. That establishing that link is what linking atrocities to leadership probably refers to in this context, not simply showing, like I said, that crimes occurred in isolated events, but showing knowledge and control at the command or leadership level. Very often we have, of course, we have witness testimonies, but beside that, we have several other categories that prosecutors usually rely on. And that can be, for instance, satellite image, forensic evidence, documentary, photographic or video material. So especially when we speak about the leadership responsibility, I think a wide pool of evidence is what's very important to the ICC in this context.
Yeah, because UN experts have suggested that some of the violence in Darfur bears the hallmarks of a genocide. Legally, what would you say distinguishes genocide from war crimes or crimes against humanity?
So genocide is a crime against a certain population, a certain group, to eradicate, eliminate that group, or to put on conditions, as we have seen, for instance, in the Gaza situation, to extinguish or to extinguish that group. War crimes require an armed conflict. That is what we most likely have here, where we have an armed conflict, ongoing armed conflict. Crimes against humanity in the context can occur outside an armed conflict, meaning outside the theater of war, and are not dependent in that regard.
The Rapid Support Forces deny targeting civilians. How do investigators navigate such conflicting narratives?
I think conflicting narratives are something that we see in many atrocities and investigations these days. The alleged perpetrators often deny their wrongdoing, while the victims and survivors provide a completely different account. So it's up to the investigators of the ICC or any prosecuting authority not to decide which narrative now they prefer or which is most convincing, but to test every claim against the independently verifiable evidence. In that regard, the investigators don't resolve disputed accounts by weighing which side's public statements are more persuasive. They test their claims against independently gathered or corroborated evidence. There can be, like I said, witness accounts that have been collected separately, forensic and medical documentation, video or photographic materials. So they have access to a wider pool of evidence, and they will test that against the evidence they have.
Yeah, but on the other end, some critics may argue that when it comes to international justice mechanisms, they're slow and selective. And of course, we've seen ICC cases take years before reaching trial. Even if arrest warrants are issued, enforcement has always been the ICC's biggest challenge without, pardon me, its own police force. How realistic do you think it is that those most responsible will actually face trial?
I think it depends on various factors. Like you said, the ICC doesn't have its own independent enforcement entity, meaning it doesn't have its own police. So it depends entirely on the cooperation of states to make arrests and surrender the individuals to The Hague. So there are various aspects, of course. Political will and state cooperation is one of them. We have seen here in South Africa in 2015 that the former president of Sudan, Omar al-Bashir, traveled to South Africa despite an ICC arrest warrant and a request for arrest and surrender. That is a case that the Southern Africa Litigation Centre litigated at the time. Other cases are, for instance, more recently the visit of Netanyahu to Hungary despite an existing arrest warrant, or the visit of President Putin to the Mongolia that we have seen a few years back. So state cooperation is certainly can become an issue, especially when we talk about heads of states that are the head of state of a more powerful states, where even ICC member states have in advance, before their visits, made statements in terms of where they would conduct an arrest warrant or not. So it is built into the architecture and structure of the ICC. And I think in this case, it will highly depend on, of course, once the arrest warrants are being made public, we will know more who is actually wanted by the ICC.
Yeah, that'll be an important piece of the entire probe. Thank you very much for speaking to us this evening. That was Dr. Atilla Kisla, who's International Justice Cluster Lead at the Southern Africa Litigation Centre.